Next up, he's the director, showrunner of the Emmy-nominated The Underground Railroad, Barry Jenkins. Barry, good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Definitely. She's nominated for lead actress as playing Beth Harmon in The Queen's Gambit. Anya Taylor-Joy. Anya, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Also nominated for lead actress, of course, for playing Wandamaximoff, who is also the Scarlet Witch in WandaVision, Elizabeth Olsen. Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you.
And finally, she's executive producer as well as lead actress playing the title character, Mayor Sheehan in Mayor of Easttown, Kate Winslet. Kate, welcome as well.
Hi, thank you.
Congratulations to all of you for your Emmy nominations. These were all such unique, powerful works. They kept us sort of entertained, but also engaged over the past year during quarantine. So a lot to talk about, but I want to kind of go with the origin story first off. I know you've probably been asked this question a lot, but I think it's helpful for people who are just coming to some of your programs to sort of get that early feel of what drew you to these shows. And Elizabeth, I want to start with you because again, it's the
I had no choice. I'm kidding.
but the audacity, the audacious nature of WandaVision, when Jack how this is going to look, this is the idea of recreating these old TV shows as sort of the entry point to dive deep into Wanda's grief and to the fact that you were going to have so much fun sort of recreating different eras of TV. And this was something that was so unique, sort of hard even for people to explain until they actually saw that. What was your take when they first sort of said, this is what WandaVision is going to be?
Well, it was just a conversation that Kevin Feige had with me, and who's the head of the MCU. And it was out of left field doing TV for Marvel. I was kind of mortified to have these characters on a television as opposed to a big screen because they kind of feel like they belong there. And I think it was really when he just explained to me that we were going to explore Wanda's trauma through her need to hold on to the nostalgia of these sitcoms from her childhood. It already felt kind of Twilight Zone-y for me. And so I was excited by that. And I felt like if, we could fail swinging big, or we could just swing big and be like an awkward cousin to the MCU. And it ended up being one of the most like creative and rewarding experiences we had. We all were just like, we were just such fools every day. And that was so freeing, and really felt like such an ensemble actor troupe every single day. And it really felt great.
Yeah. And when they told you you're going to be doing a Dick Van Dyke show, you're going to be doing Bewitched, you're going to be doing Family Ties, that must have been, as just a performer, like, wow, I'm doing like 20 shows in this one series.
Yeah, I mean, it was first mortifying to think that our first day of work was going to be at a live taping, and our first episode was a live taping in front of a live audience, and that was our introduction to shooting the entire show. So that felt terrifying. But I mean, it's like an actor's dream, right? Like as many like given circumstances that can be changed, like the voice, your body, the way you move, your manners, and then you got to switch them like often. Like it was just playtime.
Well, Kate, very different experience in first learning about the world of Mayor and this whole universe that Brad had created. Take me back to the initial pitch, the initial idea, and sort of what drew you to it, and what were sort of those early conversations like?
Well, I was very excited when I was told that a series was being sent. And my agents, who I've been with since I was a teenager, both of them, they just said, look, just read this as soon as you can. It's absolutely terrific. And I was working on something else at the time that was quite demanding. I thought, God, how am I gonna sort of down tools and be able to concentrate? And I just thought, you know what, fuck it, I'll just read it now. I'll just read it right now. I just sort of dropped everything else and sat up through the night and read episodes 1 and 2. And I think what struck me the most actually was how much I felt an immediate connection with the sense of community and family that sort of it creates the beating heart of Easttown. And I was just blown away that a man could create such a powerful, strong role for a middle-aged woman who's a mother and also a grandmother. And it just struck so many chords with me. You know, mothers everywhere the world over will know that when the chips are down, you have no choice but to just keep going. And there's extraordinary strength in the face of overwhelming, consuming grief, and yet her capacity to still sort of hold everyone up around her in spite of herself, in spite of her own well-being and ability at times to even think clearly. I just had never read anything like it. And I was really scared. You know, I'm not going to lie, I was really scared. And the idea of executive producing too was very appealing, because the only way to make it work was to be all hands on deck and to be part of a team leading all of these actors. And we had so many young actors, and that was one of the most rewarding parts of the process for me, was being able to sort of have their backs every step of the way, and to provide something of a backbone for everybody, especially then in the face of COVID, which we obviously had to shut down in the middle because of. And it just meant a lot to me at this time in my life to take on so much, and to be a sort of leader for everyone, in as much as I was able to. And to play Mershi in like one of the greatest female roles, actually probably the greatest female role I had ever read on a piece of paper. And to this day, I'm overwhelmed that they asked me.
Well, so when you read those first 2 scripts, how quickly did you call up, and how much did you want to know where the ending was going to be, and how quickly did you say, okay, how are you going to wrap this? What is what's the resolution of this murder mystery that's also in this mix?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to know immediately everything. And actually, not all of the episodes were completely written at that point, not all 7. I said yes right away. I mean, I read until sort of 4 in the morning, and then, you know, immediately sent an email and just said, I'm in. I could just feel that, you know, it's funny. People have said to me, oh, didn't you think that was a bit of a risk signing up after just 2? But it's not very often that every episode is completed with television. I'm sure everyone else can say the same thing. Like, you don't get handed this glossy package of a full, you know, 7 or 8 or 10 or whatever. And I just, I sure as hell wanted to know who'd done it. Yeah, I was chomping at the bit for sure.
And it was a satisfying ending as well. No spoilers, but very satisfying ending. Well, Papa, let me ask you, you had a long friendship with Michaela Cole. So I'm sure she sort of, talked to you early on about this project that she was working on. And I'm curious how she sort of described it, and how soon in that process did she ask you to be a part of that? And when you started to sort of hear what she was going to do, something so personal, so, sort of, strong and heartbreaking and gripping, but funny too. What was sort of your reaction to her when you first started talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, me and Michaela have been friends for a long time. We kind of trained together. We went to drama school together when we were little ones. But she, this opportunity didn't even come through her. Do you know what I mean? So like, I've been like talking to her for so long, and yeah, I was kind of like there when the kind of events that the show's based on happened. We'd been kind of like talking about this thing that she was writing, and she spent a long time writing it, and obviously it was very personal, and we would talk about it as friends, but like, it's funny, like when your friend's a writer and you're an actor, like you have to kind of like respect boundaries. So like, you do everything you can to not be like, oh, is there a part for me, you know, like, and you know, like we were all kind of doing different things, but it never came through her. It came through our amazing casting director Julie Harkin, and she went to Michaela and said, what about Papa for this role? And Michaela was like, what, really? And I was like, so you know, it's like one of those ones,
especially when you saw the character of Kwame and you saw what he goes through as well, and just the amount of material that was for that character. I'm sure, did that sort of that character immediately pop for you?
Yeah, I mean the character's got 3 dimensions on the page as well, but yeah, we kind of went through many iterations to kind of land on what we ended up on camera, which came through a lot of collaboration between me and Michaela. And like, she's amazing in terms of having an openness to collaboration and to ideas and thoughts or whatever. But yeah, I definitely on the page saw a man that was kind of like so incredibly vibrant and kind of like singing in his skin, and goes through something that's so awful and challenging, and has the kind of like journey afterwards towards some sort of peace. Yeah, it's a kind of it's kind of diamond of a challenge for an actor, but we kind of developed it together as we went along.
Well, I hope you told Michaela, next time you're writing something, just think of me immediately. Just, you know, don't go through this whole process. We're mates,
Yeah.
right?
It's a very British thing to kind of not go out there and get it. Maybe I need to be a bit more American in that sense.
Don't be more American. Anya, I know a lot's been talked about sort of the long process for Queen's Gambit to happen, and of course, you know, part of that narrative is, you know, everyone just saw it as it's a show about chess. We're going to do a show about chess. Pass. It took a long time for the producers to finally explain, to really just get that pitch heard, and for it to finally happen. Talk about your process in learning about the project, that whole, like, wait, you're doing a show about chess moments, and realizing, oh, there's so much more here. This is an amazing character at the heart of it.
Yeah, I had a lot of my friends say to me, because I was doing a run of 3 movies, and I knew that I was going to have one day off in between all of them, culminating with Queen's Gambit. And anybody that I would speak to on set, and they'd say, what are you doing next? I was like, I'm making a 7-hour show about chess. And they were like, go have fun, enjoy yourself. She's lost it. But no, I was working on 2 things at the same time, and I had heard that Scott Frank wanted to meet with me on something that didn't have a script, but that there was a book. And similarly to Kate, I was like, how am I going to consume this book and meet this man and be able to have this discussion with him, because I was a big fan of his. And from the second I opened it, I was devoured by it. Like, it was the first line on the page. I just fell so deeply in love with her, and I felt her so much that I finished the book. And I just remember it so clearly. I closed the book, I put on my shoes, and I physically ran to meet Scott Frank at a restaurant. Like, I just ran through the park. I was so overwhelmed by this. And then when I saw him in the restaurant, I just kind of screamed at him, it's not about chess, and she has to have red hair. And rather than locking me up in an institution, he was like, you're right, sit down, let's have a conversation about this. And just from our first meeting, we were making the same show. It was really quite extraordinary how so many different people had just seen the same vision for what they wanted this to be. And what I loved about it was such a passion project for everybody involved. Like, nobody was really making it, which sounds counterintuitive, but nobody was really making it for it to be seen. We all just felt like this really deep passion to tell this story and to bring this character to life. And I feel so lucky. It's been the most incredible journey. And yeah, I just feel really, really lucky.
You miss the red hair? You bringing it back, or?
Yeah, I do miss the red hair. I'm dyeing it again, actually. But yeah, it sounds silly, but I put so much emphasis on the wigs, because we had to have wigs. We were switching ages. You know, we do 15, 19, 21 all in one day. So the only way to achieve that was wigs. But my mum took a really cute picture of the last day when I finally took the wig off, and I just gave her a really big hug. It was really emotional. It was wonderful.
And Barry, let's talk about reading Colson Whitehead's book for the first time, and then refresh my memory the sort of the chronology of how it went from that to actually becoming a Barry Jenkins adaptation.
Yeah, well, shit, before that, let me say, this is the prettiest panel I've ever been on. Normally, they keep me in the background, and I'm looking at
Right
the
back at you, brother.
I'm looking at
Right
the other
back
four
at you.
boxes. I feel like that guy at the nightclub who's standing on the side while all the pretty people get to walk right in. That's kind of how this feels. So thank you, Variety, for putting me on a panel with all these actors. Yeah, it was about 5 years to the day. Moonlight was going to premiere at Telluride, and I'd heard that Colson Whitehead had written this book about the Underground Railroad. And as a kid, when I first heard about the Underground Railroad, I saw men like my granddad, who was a longshoreman. He would get up in the morning, put his boots and his hard hat on. And I thought, oh, people like my granddad built the Underground Railroad. And then you learn that's not true. But knowing the kind of writer Colson was, when I heard he had written a book about the Underground Railroad with this conceit of the railroad being real, I thought, oh, I'm going to order this book actually on Amazon. I ordered the book on Amazon. And then people were like, no, you have this movie that's going to this big festival. We can get you a galley of the book. And so they sent me the book about a month before it came out. And I read it, and right away just thought, oh, I think this will make a really wonderful television series.
Yeah, the whole aspect of like being a kid and thinking the Underground Railroad was an actual railroad, and then being able to actually sort of play with that idea must have been really interesting. And early on, with Colson being a part of it, talk about sort of that conversation with him in figuring out how to adapt it and what elements and having him be a part of that process.
Yeah, I mean, he actually didn't want to be a part of it because he was writing another book called The Nickel Boys, which ultimately came out while we were making the show and won his second Pulitzer in a row. So he was pretty busy, but I was kind of naive back then. And so I just told him the truth that I had no interest in making the book into a feature, that it had to be a television series. The book itself was broken into these chapters, so it's inherently serialized. So I told him, if you want to make this into a feature film, I'm not the person for it. And he agreed. The cool thing about making the show, again, I had this feeling as a kid. I didn't imagine Black people on trains. I saw Black people on trains underground. And now what we do is, if we can imagine an image, we can create it. And so there's something very empowering about making the show. And I even told our production designer that there couldn't be CGI trains. The trains had to be real. And so we built the tunnels above the train tracks so that we could actually walk into them. It was a really, really cool experience.
Yeah, so that's cool. And by the way, I had with multiple Pulitzers. Did his Pulitzers meet your Oscar? Like, have they had any sort of?
No, I keep my Oscar in a very dark place. It's actually it's at the museum now, but no, there was no meeting of those things.
Let's talk about sort of some of these characters, because these are all very iconic characters, as we've mentioned, and that includes the characters on your show, Barry. But Anya, I want to start because Beth. This is a character who is struggling with her own sort of addiction, and at the same time, that's sort of what drives her. She's such a sort of fascinating character. I'm sure there's moments where you're cheering her on, and other moments where you're just frustrated with Beth. Like, what is she doing? Why is she doing this? What were sort of your favorite traits of your character, and the most frustrating parts of your character?
Goodness. It's interesting. I was never frustrated with her because I just had no skin with this character. I've never experienced anything quite like it. I would not describe myself as a method actor, but there was just no skin. And so if she was behaving badly, I was just right along there with her. But I will say that one of my favorite things about her is that she's okay with not being everybody's cup of tea. And that's something that I really enjoyed playing. I enjoyed playing somebody that was slightly out of the loop in terms of societal norms of what was polite. And I think that that was an interesting way of, especially showing a woman in the 60s, because she seems to have been born without the guidebook of what women were allowed to want at the time. And that's such an interesting way for the audience to kind of critique the society around it, because she herself is inherently confused whenever people bring up her gender. She doesn't see it as, something that needs to be talked about. So I really enjoyed playing. I kind of called her my little alien. She was just, slightly outside of all of it. But yeah.
Yeah, those are some fun moments, especially early on when she first is getting to these chess tournaments and just is bold and like, why can't I do this? And people are so taken aback that they sort of don't know what to do. And so she's able to kind of push through, and because she just has no fear. And that's must have been sort of fun to play, and those kind of traits that we all wish we had more of.
Honestly, I think the thing is that I'm probably, from being brought up in England, I'm very polite. I cannot help but be polite. And I love that Beth does not necessarily have that. She just is very straight with people. And for me personally, it was freeing to be in the skin of somebody that wasn't consistently thinking about how to make other people comfortable. That was really, I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah. Well, and Kate Mare is kind of the same way, right? I mean, she is at that point in her life where she doesn't suffer fools. She just wants to do what she thinks the right thing, even if it's causes problems at home, problems at the job. You sort of were touching on earlier, just what a unique character Mare is, but talk a little bit more about what drew you in playing someone who she's trying to do what she thinks is right, even if no one else is on her side.
I mean, Mare has so much pressure on her and so much expectation at all times, not just from her family and the immediate people who need her the most of all, but from the town, because she scored this winning shot in a basketball game 25 years ago, and it put East Town on the map. And she hates that. She'd do anything she possibly could to get rid of that. She can't change it, but here she is, sort of limping through life, and yet still being held up as this hero. So the one thing I will say I indulged in enormously was the fact that she just doesn't give a shit. She doesn't give a shit what people think of her. She doesn't care what she eats, what she says, what she looks like, what she wears. She's just getting through every day. This was a woman who would look in the mirror when she brushed her teeth in the morning, and probably not again until she brushed her teeth at night. So it was very important to me and to all of the creative heads of the department that we were all singing from the same song sheet when it came to the fabric of Mare's world, and how she walked and moved, number one, but also what she wore, what the wallpaper was like in her house, what the furniture was like, her surroundings, all the people in it. And we didn't want to do a TV version of that world. We just wanted it to feel completely real. I mean, we take my costumes off at night, and confession, those jeans got washed once a week. Like, that was it. Everything would come off and it would stay in this crumpled little sort of sculpture on the floor, and we'd go, okay, walk away. And the poor costume people were like, but please, can I just wash the socks? And I'd be like, nope, just leave it. Just leave it. And so I did indulge in that side of her. It had to feel, it had to be real. We couldn't do anything for pretend. The vaping and the cheese whiz on the cheese balls and the eating in the car. And I was very lucky. Our art department really included me in how those spaces were set dressed, because Mare spends private quiet time only ever in that car when she's driving around. And so I imagined all the things that would be in there, you know, a lost shoe, Cheerios on the floor, you know, the cup holders would be so stuffed with other things that she'd never be able to get the cup in there. And if there was a cup in there, it would have days old cold coffee in it, you know, never water bottles anywhere, and just rubbish everywhere, because her life was in chaos. And yet the only thing she had to hang on to was her job, solving everyone else's problems so that she never had to confront her own. And that affected every single aspect of who she was and how she looked. And I full on just indulged in that side of her. It was like an endless fountain of joy for me.
What's your take now on cheese whiz on top of hoagies? Is that still part of your diet, or was that you cut that out?
Favorite food group, cheese whiz. It's like it's a whole, you know, it's a whole new food group for me, and I miss it. I dream about it, actually. I dream about cheese whiz.
And real quick, because I know you're asked about this a lot, we can't let you know, the quick conversation about the accent go, because that's such an iconic part of Mayor, and you know what you had to pull off to sort of do that authentic sort of you know, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia-esque accent.
I can't. It like makes me sweat just thinking about it now. Like it still completely makes me sweat. I mean, I just, you know, I just put in the work. I mean, just every day, you know, it's, you know, with any dialect, you don't just sort of learn it and then walk away and, you know, hope that it can be there. Every single day I'd get in the car, I'd listen to my dialect samples. I had two women I would listen to all the time, a woman named Trish Lauria, who was a special needs teacher who was from Delaware County, and a wonderful female detective named Christine Blayler, who was from Chester County. And I just would listen to them all the time. And I had a coach who I've known for a very, very long time. I was lucky enough that they just assigned her to me, because the sheer volume of what I had to do, it wouldn't have worked to have had to sort of wait my turn with the dialect coach who was working with everyone else. So I was really lucky with that, because we could just figure out our own sort of mad systems for things, and just, I mean, I just put in the work, you know. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like I would say to Brad Inglesby, do you realize I have to do this? I have to do this so absurdly well that no one can hear me doing it anymore. You know, people know I'm English. You know, it is harder to do an accent, because you have to get rid of all, you know, the muscularity in your face. That all has to change as well. The posture has to go with it. You know, it all becomes a part of it. It isn't separate. It drove me nuts, and I'm very relieved to hear that people thought that it worked.
Yeah, that's pretty astounding. That's pretty amazing. So you have to be extra proud of that.
I'm proud of that. Yeah, I'm proud of all of us for that. It was tricky.
Papa, let's talk more about your character, Kwame, because like you were mentioning, he's an aerobics instructor. He's got a lot of joy. You know, he's Michaela Cole's character's best friend. You know, and so when we meet him, there is just so much life to him. And then he goes through this traumatic event, and you know, especially as a young gay Black man in London, no one believes him. He struggles for anyone to listen to him, and it changes him, and it's so so powerful to watch. But you know, in your mind, sort of, you know, how did you sort of, you know, handle that sort of evolution of this character? What was sort of your take on Kwame, and how did you want to play him?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thankful that you kind of like pick up on where we kind of like meet him at the beginning of the show, because like something, the kind of traumatic event that happens to him could be so defining that his character becomes one of trauma, and one of pain, and one of you know, gloom, where obviously there's space for that in his story, but I really wanted to focus on having something a bit more full and a bit more nuanced and a bit more kind of like yin yang, you know. So like for me, like when I think of Kwame, I think of someone who, in any other circumstance, is the life and soul of the party. He's the center of the room. He's the energy towards whom everyone is drawn to, and that's why he forms these like incredible friendships with these incredible women in his life. You know, like he's an exciting, interesting, smart, whip smart, you know, attractive man, but he's also like very like vulnerable and naive in many ways and has much to learn. And it's sad that his journey of learning is kind of like turbocharged by what happens to him. But yeah, I was kind of just like astounded and really it made me feel good, the fact that like Michaela allowed his path, his journey of learning to go on many different kind of routes. You know, it was never about like doing the right thing at the right time. He made some wrong decisions, he made some right decisions, and that to me felt very human. And the one thing that I think I love about Kwame, and I think many people do, is his humanity. You know, so yeah.
I also wanted to ask you about, I know there was a intimacy coordinator on set, which is now becoming standard practice, which is great and very important to make sure that sets are a safe space. And in particular, you know, when you're called on to do some really, you know, intimate and vulnerable scenes. For you, what's that like in working with an intimacy coordinator and in sort of making sure that you feel comfortable in sort of depicting certain scenes?
Yeah, I mean, how ironic would it be if we were doing a show about the boundaries of consent and what people feel safe doing if the actual performers didn't feel safe themselves? Like, I've kind of worked with intimacy coordinators and I've worked without them, and I kind of feel like now it's got to be the same as like having a fight coordinator. You'd never do like you know, the Count of Monte Cristo with like sword fights, or Zorro or whatever, without a fight coordinator. You'd never like put a sharp sword in Antonio Banderas's hand and just like expect him not to kill someone or put someone in the eye. You know? So I think it's the same with these scenes, and it just allows you to properly do it. You know, it allows you to really focus on what you're doing, because you're not because everyone feels safe, and you're not thinking, oh, like, does that person think I'm touching them like that in this way? Or, you know, you can just like focus on what the character's focusing on. You can go through what the character is going through. It allows you to have like less distraction, and yeah, I feel commit to the scene more. And I feel like with these scenes that we were kind of attacking in our show, you had to go all the way with it. You couldn't we didn't want to kind of half do it, or we didn't want to intimate at what we were trying to explore. We had to go all the way. So that's why I think it was just vital that we had the space clearly marketed to do that properly.
Elizabeth, I wanted to talk a little bit about Wanda and sort of, you know, WandaVision. It's such a unique show again in that, you know, you had those elements of the sitcom scenes that we talked a little bit about, and the fact that you got to do a multi-camera sitcom inside this show must have been a blast. But then there's also those moments where you do explore the grief of this character, and we really get to dive deeper into Wanda in ways that maybe there wasn't time to do in the features, but you could do in a series like that. So I guess it's kind of a two-pronged question, you know, that having fun with Wanda in doing these sitcom scenes, but then also getting a chance to explore, you know, sort of deeper you know, conversations about grief and you know, tragedy and personal trauma.
Well, every episode charts kind of her own awareness of her coping mechanism of this show, and we get to play with how conscious she is of controlling the situation in order to like keep the lid on it, and to keep the thing that she wants so badly, which is a family nucleus, which we've watched her through the movies lose. She started off without her parents, and then her brother died, and then she's displaced in the States with these people, the Avengers, not really knowing whether or not she wants to use the abilities that she has. And this is a show that's all about her inner trauma that she's been not able to process. And through these sitcoms, she's holding on to some sort of comfort. And every episode, like in the first episode in the 50s, when things start to crack, she's not aware of what's cracking or why. In the 60s, she starts to figure it out. In the 70s, she becomes completely in control and decides that she's going to keep this together because she doesn't want anything to ruin the family that she has now built, because it's the one thing that she wants. And so, it was a clever way of exploring someone's trauma, almost like palatable for, I think, an audience. And I think that was what was most fun for me in the show, was always figuring out how to tread the line of all the layers that she's trying to hold on to, and when they slip. When does she show that she's aware of the world she's created, and when does she decide to put the curtains back over it? And so that's what was fun as an actor, I think, to me, was to kind of find that every episode, what that tool is, and how it unravels by the end of it.
And Barry, let's talk about sort of pacing the Underground Railroad, and obviously focusing on one character's journey throughout, but also dividing that up into chapters and balancing her journey with overall sort of discussing sort of the horrors of slavery, and touching on resistance, touching on this what the Underground Railroad meant, both the symbolism and also the actual act. But kind of, how did you, as a writer, as a director, sort of figure out how to sort of tell this story and divide it into these chapters?
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing is Colson White had done most of the heavy lifting in that regard. I mean, he's a MacArthur genius, and so when you're adapting the work of geniuses, you kind of just let them show you the way. So most of that stuff had already been mapped out. What was cool about the project was it did seem like it was an opportunity to really just take a look at the entirety of that experience. Both that of the enslaved and everyone around, everyone orbiting our main character. One of the really dope things about the book is that even though it's based on historical facts to a certain degree, it's a work of fiction. And there's always been this discussion about fact and fiction. Which one is more worthwhile, which one is more useful. But then there's this third prong of truth. And I think we're in a time right now. I remember being in grade school, and there was this textbook that described the condition of American slavery as being conscripted labor. So this is something that's presented as fact, as a textbook. I would have learned more about the actual condition of American slavery by reading the fiction of Toni Morrison. And so I think by taking this fictionalized account of the Underground Railroad, it was really this wonderful opportunity to just paint this huge quilt of what this period in American history was, because we live in a time right now where I was on the mix stage on January 6th and this insurrection was happening. And because we were mixing the show, I couldn't hear it, but I could see it. So I could see exactly what this thing was, this fact happening in real time, in real images. And now here we are a year and a half later, and we're still debating what that fact is. And as artists, fact has always been this thing that's been used to belittle the work of fiction, to belittle the work of art. But I think right now, art is a much more useful tool to get at the truth of what's happening both in the past and the present. So it seemed like a really cool opportunity to do a bit of that, sometimes in 20 minutes, sometimes in 90 minutes. I think that's the beauty of being a storyteller right now.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me how some of the comedy shows are actually doing the best news of any of the news programs.
Exactly.
Well, we have quick round robin time. We're already sort of ending, getting to the end of our conversation, but I quickly wanted to give you all a chance to sort of just give us a moment to maybe go back and revisit on your shows, just to sort of give everyone a taste of what they should be looking at. So Barry, I'll start with you. Kind of put you in the hot seat. Sort of a moment for folks to revisit in Underground Railroad.
Yeah, I guess the moment I would choose is a moment that exists outside the show. As we were making the series, we would just pop off these portraits, these tableaus of the background actors, and we did it throughout the entire shoot. And so we ended up with about 4 hours of these portraits, and we cut an hour of the best bits of them into this piece called The Gaze, which is showing at the Museum of the Moving Image. It's on my Vimeo page. And I really love it because it just encapsulates the passion everyone had for the show and the beauty of the idea that you could be number 1 on the call sheet or number 500 on the call sheet. And eventually the lens would find you and you would have your time to show yourself in this endeavor of bringing my ancestors to life. So that would be the thing I would encourage people to visit.
That's cool. Check it out. Elizabeth, sort of a moment that stayed with you from WandaVision.
That's such a horrible question to ask to me. I would say, oh God, just anything with Catherine Hahn, and focus on her because I can't think about myself. Just like when she has a song and there's a montage and where she's sharing with the audience that she's been, hiding in this world all along. And what episode is it? Episode 7? I think it's episode 7. Just watch Catherine Hahn.
And I would say all the opening credits that they created for all these different little
Fabulous. Those are very fun.
So amazing and spot on. Papa, put you on the hot seat now. Favorite moment or scene?
Yeah, it's hard in that. I suppose for me, it's maybe the final episode of the show, which is, I guess like where everything kind of comes to a head, but also I suppose where it becomes its most experimental. It starts kind of like fissuring in terms of like a linear storytelling plan. We start going back and reliving and playing out different fantasy versions of what these characters are going through. That's what I'm really drawn to, I think, in the kind of the stuff that I watch, something a little bit more offbeat and unexpected. So yeah, that final episode, and the music's really good as well. So
yeah,
check out.
Fantastic. Anya, favorite moment?
Ooh, I loved filming episode 6 because episode 6, you got to see Beth in so many different situations, and you really got to see a ramping up of what you thought was going to be the time where she had found some stable ground, and she's in New York and she's not drinking and she has a semi-family base now, and then it all just falls apart. And particularly there's a conversation with the wonderful Harry Melling that takes place outside of the chess tournament that she doesn't play when she shows up completely wrecked. And I loved that conversation because I think alcoholism or addiction tends to be quite glamorized. And there's a wonderful line that his character says where he's describing his father's alcoholism, and he just says he was never mean, but he would, get quiet and fall asleep in his clothes. And that line broke me. I really remember him delivering that and just thinking, oh, that's heavy. So yeah, I'd say that conversation.
Yeah. Sort of the truth of functional alcoholism.
Exactly.
And finally, Kate, besides my favorite moment, I think maybe how Jean Smart's character hides her ice cream. But besides that, your favorite moment.
I mean, yeah, Jean. Jean. Everything to do with Jean. I think my favorite moment. So hard to talk about things that you're proud of, because as an actor, it's like you just want to throw up, sort of like complimenting oneself in some strange way. But I think I'm proud of a scene in episode 2 actually, when Mare goes to visit her son's new pediatrician to talk about the tics that they've been noticing recently, and it's the first time in probably since Mare's own son committed suicide, that she's actually talked about the guilt that she as a mother felt that she had to check out at a certain point and failed him, that she feels that she failed him. And the scene was written very kind of matter of fact, like just one woman talking to a doctor. And it's sort of it was so much to sort of bear that scene, this confession of failure from a mother about her parenting of her child, and how she'd actually found it hard to love him. And we ended up playing it just very, very differently to how it was presented on the page on the day. And that's when collaboration can be at its most exciting. And for me, I'm proud of that. And I'm just going to add one other little thing. I made a request as an executive producer, and I just want to share this with everyone because it was like such a simple thing. I said to the other producers, we can't have any plastic bottles on this set. Like that's not a thing that we're going to have. So how are we going to fix it? And we gave every crew member and every actor their own bottle at the beginning of the show. And we calculated that across our 6.5-month shoot, we saved over 77,000 plastic bottles just by having our own refillable bottle. And I just want to share that because it's the easiest request to make. And we saved so much plastic. And so I just have to add that because I was, as an executive producer, unbelievably proud that we did that. And it was such a simple thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That's a good point for all productions to think about in the future. So, well, again,
Absolutely.
congratulations to all of you. For folks out there who haven't watched all these series, what are you waiting for? They're all streaming right now. Go back and watch it. Papa, congratulations on I May Destroy You. Barry, The Underground Railroad is a triumph. Anya, of course, Queen's Gambit. You've gotten people playing chess again, which is amazing. Elizabeth, WandaVision was like nothing we'd seen on TV. It was so fun to watch. And of course, Kate, a show that actually had a satisfying ending. That's not easy to do. And you pulled off a series that actually paid off in the end. So congratulations on that. Thank you, all of you, for joining us here at the Variety TV Fest Virtual Edition. The nominees, the limited series nominees. I'm Michael Schneider. We'll see you next time.